Merilee. I am the healer and intuitive at Spiritual Source Healing. And I also run the podcast, Spiritual Journeys with Merilee. We have had 3 podcasts, and in that time, I realized I really hadn't told my story. And I think it's important that you all know my story as well as the stories that my guests tell. So I'm just going to start kind of at the beginning, and we'll see how we do. So I was just a regular high school kid. I was a cheerleader, and when I finished high school, I was done with learning. I had no desire to go any further in my education. I had this almost idyllic high school experience, and I was done. And I was working for a couple of years at a grocery chain, which has since gone under here in the area that I'm in the Chicago area. And I was at a local bookstore near where I worked. And I was just looking through the books, and this man walks in who I know. He was my favorite teacher from high school. And he comes in, and we both recognize each other. And he says, Merilee! And I called him by his last name, which I'm not going to do here. But we started talking, and eventually he says, so where are you in college? And I said, I'm not. And I kid you not, he grabbed me by the ear, and he pulled me outside to the curb. Now I'm 20 years old. He pulls me out, he sits me down on the curb, and he starts talking about how if anybody should have gone to college, it should have been me. You need to go to college. You need to go. And this was a moment for me that changed my life, because within 2 weeks of that encounter with that former high school teacher, I was registered and enrolled at Loyola University of Chicago. And I majored in history. And I was so glad that I went back. And I was also very happy to have gone back as an older student. It made the experience a lot different than being 18. So I get a degree in history, and I try looking for jobs, and I wasn't having luck in terms of jobs that I wanted to have because it was a liberal arts degree. But it was my passion at the time, and it still is in many ways today. So I started looking around for a program where I could get certified to teach history, because I figured maybe I could pass on my passion to other people and maybe give them what I didn't realize at the time when I was busy being a cheerleader was a very quality education. And so I found that the best way for me to go was to get a master's in education in curriculum and instruction at Loyola University of Chicago. And had a great 2 years of graduate school there. Went right from graduate school. I got the first job I interviewed for. And I spent actually 15 years in the classroom there, loving every minute of it. But my first 2 years, the first 2 years of teaching, or the first 2 years of doing anything, are really a huge learning experience. And in my second year, I remembered something that had been told to me by 2 older women. They were in their late 20s. I was in my early 20s. And they said, there's this psychic that you need to see, but you're not old enough yet. Right? So I realized that I am the exact age that they were when they went to see her. So I give her office a call. And they say, there is no way that you can get in. We're booked up for the next 6 months. And she said, oh, wait, we do have a cancellation on January 16th. And January 16th, that was the first ever Martin Luther King Day. So I had the day off and I was able to go and see um, that the psychic. And talk about synchronicity, right? So I'm waiting out in the hallway. I'm very excited to see her because these two women that I had known, they had just talked about her in glowing terms. So when it's my turn, I walk in the door, I close the door behind me, and I turn around, and she says, "Oh my God, your hands are glowing green in your aura. You're a healer." And before we did anything in the reading, she wrote down a woman's name who was a Reiki master. And after the reading, I called this woman immediately. I was attuned to Reiki very quickly after um, after seeing the psychic. I was attuned as a master a couple of years later. So I have been a Reiki master and healer for 30 years. And it started then that I was looking for something more. And in my 30 years, I have used Reiki almost as a meditative um, and spiritual thing. And I know that there are others that are saying that that's exactly what it is. And I'm glad because I think it is a wonderful way of doing that. But I had been teaching for a while. And there's always a part of me, though, since I was a little girl, that wanted to go to law school. I know, cheerleader, law school, spiritual intuitive. Okay, so these two young people that I'd been teaching in U.S. history because I had to teach the Constitution, and they knew me, and I had probably said multiple times that I always wanted to go to law school. So they come in because the year that this happens, the ACT is not free in the state of Illinois. You had to pay for it. But these two young people, they did not have the money and they were applying for the financial aid for it. So they came into my classroom after school to ask me to help them in applying for the financial aid. And we're talking about it and we're working on the form. And finally, the young woman, she says, "Oh," and Mrs. Slepenko, which that it was my married name, but "Oh, Mrs. Slepenko, look, we have an LSAT application for you. Put your money where your mouth is." And she said, well, actually, he said, it's the same day we'd be taking the ACT. So, all right, I can do this. Why not? Right? I'll be modeling lifelong learning. The next Monday, we can talk about taking standardized tests. It'll be brilliant. It'll be beautiful, right? Um, so I sent in the application. They sent in their application. They did get the money that they needed to be able to take the ACT, or they um, got to take the ACT for free, which was good. And both of them did go on to college and do very well. But so I approached that LSAT as just like I'm just doing it for the kids. So I ended up scoring high enough on the LSAT with no preparation to get a scholarship to um, John Marshall Law School, which is now University of Illinois at Circle Campus, Chicago Law School, or UIC Law. And I went to law school at night while I was teaching, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing to go to law school, and I had to stop because I actually I broke my neck in 2001. I have a titanium plate and 6 screws in my cervical spine, And I have been told by multiple intuitives that, wow, that was a big karmic break. Yeah, kind of was. Um, but after 2 years of healing and also being very upset that I had not finished law school, I went back and I finished law school at night. And I really enjoyed law school. Now, think about this for a second. Here's this cheerleader who's done with learning, who now has actually, by the time I go to law school, I have 3 master's degrees. And now I've gone to law school and I've earned my JD, which is the Juris Doctorate. And all the time that I was in law school, I kept saying, I'm not going to take the bar because I'm never going to practice law. I'm not going to take the bar. But I did. And I passed on the first try. And I practiced law for a period of time that I realized that as much as I could practice law and was good at it, I really enjoyed law school better than necessarily being in the courtroom. So um, I continued to teach. I did change levels. I once I had my law degree, I was able to teach um, college, and I did start teaching college at a local college here in Illinois. And I was teaching law for paralegals, which is basically law. But I had an experience that led me to look for more teachers in my life. I had lost my Reiki teacher. I couldn't find her. Um, I believe she changed her name. I don't know. But I couldn't find her. And I knew that there was more that I needed to know. And it was beyond the concrete um, of a contract or the concrete of a fact in history. And I had had experiences since I was a child, synchronicities, seeing things, hearing things. And I was I was very keen to learn more about that. But it took me a long time to find somebody. And in between that time of finding a new of losing my teacher and then seeking out a new teacher after law school, um, I had a near death experience that pushed me to pushed me into seeking that teacher at a more diligent level. And I did. And I ultimately found her several years after the near death experience. And I have moved from teacher to teacher, absorbing every possible thing that I can learn. And I know that my own experience as an intuitive, as a medium, I have some mediumship abilities, I have intuitive abilities, I can work energy. Um, I I know that I needed training with some of it, but some of it had been there because I had been experiencing a number of things since before I was a cheerleader. So I am a healer. I am an intuitive. I am a psychic. I am spiritual. I follow that path, and I'm connecting with people here on spiritual journeys with Merilee in order to form community, connection, and empowerment, and for people to see that they're not alone. And so I, having lived the life I've lived, have a lot more to say. But I am a healer. I have healing hands. And I remain a healer. I remain a learner. Even though at 18 I thought I was done with learning, I am so glad that I had that moment with my old teacher that just made me realize that there was absolutely no way I was done with learning. Um, spirit Spiritual Journeys with Merilee is about interviewing other people on spiritual journeys, but also from time to time, I am going to let you hear more of my tale, if you will, my story, because there are things that may have happened to you that have happened to me, things that happened to me that might happen to you, and you can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm not alone," and that's the point. And um, I will be back. I'll be back with guests. I have guests scheduled through June, and I will be back alone as well because I want to tell you my story. And I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me. So let's believe in magic.